Well, hello, everybody. It's wonderful for you for you all to join us today. We're excited about your being here. I wanted to just welcome you myself, and then we have a very full hour, just an hour. So we're going to fly through this. But I would like the next slide, please, just to open it up and welcome you. I would like to explain a little bit why we do this. For those of you that may or may not be familiar, the words Area Agency on Aging are also, we use it as our name, but are also a designation by the Older Americans Act, 1965, which comes with it a charge, which we take very seriously, to be a trusted source of information and advocacy about how policy and law affects the aging of the population and older people, which is where all you come in. And we've done that for a long time, and we believe in connecting and the power of communication between constituencies and our elected officials. With that, we have a number, I can't call everybody out, we have a number of our board and advisory council members on the call. Their commitment to this cause helps enable the AAA to do their work. And the advisory council in particular is very active in advocacy and is actually the host of today's event. So we appreciate and thank them for all of their work. The topics that we're working with today are forming a statewide platform. They're very important. We try to focus on issues, and there are many, many issues, but in Senior Action Week, this is Older Americans at Month, in the beginning of Senior Action Week, all across the state, we're having these events where we're talking about these 5 particular issues, and so that we can compare and get some action on them so people understand. It's a rich forum we're coming today, and we appreciate your participation. I want to express my appreciation to all our elected officials that are the legislators that are on the phone, Senate and House. We've had a history of strong participation in these discussions. These are issues, part of why it's beautiful about this field is that everybody can relate to it. We are all getting older every day, and we all have the American dream of just living our life independent as our beings are for the whole road. So with that, thank you to all the legislators from myself and our board and advisory council for participating today and lending your ear and your perspective as we work together to discuss policy and law, some of the bigger issues, and how action we can take to better Michigan and stronger together. So with that, I will turn it over to Christine to run through the platform, and I'll probably stick a word in here and there.
Thank you, Lynn. Appreciate it. It's my privilege to introduce our special guest today. So as our 14th annual legislative forum, we traditionally have very strong participation from the state representatives and senators representing Berrien, Cass, and Van Buren counties, and this year is no different. So it's my privilege to introduce our special guest, and I will ask the tech team behind the scenes to spotlight so folks can put names to faces and see our elected officials. So first, I'd like to welcome Senator Kim Lasada. Hi, Kim. So great to have you with us today. And then from Senator Nesbitt's office, we have Josh Prabaki. I hope I got your name right, Josh. Josh Prabaki, thank you for joining us from Senator Nesbitt's office. We also have with us from District 59 in the House, State Representative Steve Cara. Welcome, Steve. Give our tech team a bit to find folks in the queue there. Hi, Steve. Nice to see you today. And then from District 66, we have State Representative Beth Griffin. So welcome, Beth. There she is. Nice to see you. Hi. And from District 78, we have State Representative Brad Paquette. Good afternoon, Brad, State Representative. Thanks for joining us today. And last but not least, we do alpha order, and people like Van Landingham and Pauline Wenzel wind up being down on the end of the list. So there's our state representative from District 79. Welcome, Pauline. Just want to thank all of you for being here and being willing to engage in dialogue with your constituents around issues that are important to older adults in Southwest Michigan and indeed across the state. We do have a platform of legislative action that each of these legislators has received, and certainly the public has had access to it, and in fact, input into it as it's been developed. So we will discuss state issues primarily, recognizing some things are a blend of state and federal. So I do want to acknowledge that we do have a staffer from Senator Gary Peters' office. We do have Annie Brown with us. We may indeed have someone from Congressman Fred Upton's office join us midway through the event. So they'll be here to listen and to hear. They're not part of the formal panel because we are focusing on state issues, but we recognize state and federal often is a blend. Hearing these issues, we so appreciate Annie and Mike being a part of this so that it can hear the issues directly. So with that, we are going to dive into the platform because we do just have an hour together. I want to make sure that we present the issues. I'll go through the platform, Lynn and I will, and we'll talk about the issue, we'll frame it up. And we have grouped our 5 platform issues into 2 subsections. So we'll talk about first about long-term care issues, and then we'll give you legislators, a panel of legislators, the opportunity to respond and have a dialogue about that. Then we'll talk about the last 2 platform issues. And at the very end, we'll have question and answers with the broader community. So folks, I do encourage you to put your comments and your questions in the chat box. We'll get to all of them that we can at the end of this, at the latter portion of the call, and we will make sure that this esteemed panel gets a list of all the questions so that we don't miss any comments or questions that might be, we might not get to address. So with that, I will ask our tech team to put up the first platform slide. Next slide, please. Perfect, thank you. And I know you've all seen the platform for legislative action, and these 3 things were tied very closely, so it made sense to us to put them together. We want to talk about long-term care and about the issues that give us an opportunity, that maybe some challenges that face Michigan and some opportunities to strengthen what Michigan offers to older adults. And the first is rebalancing Medicaid long-term services and supports funding. And this is a key topic, one that has we've talked about for quite a while, and one that has during the pandemic come to an increasing challenge. So I will say in preamble that just to set the context for long-term care, Michigan has 2.4 million seniors, and it's growing by 46,000 seniors a year. So as we think about that, that is the population we're talking about. And for people who will turn 65 this year, 52% of people turning 65 this year will need some type of long-term care services during their lifetime. So greater than half of the people turning 65 are going to need long-term care at some point. So this is of key importance. And even as concerns about the safety of nursing homes decline more and COVID vaccines become more prevalent, it is an increasing number of older adults who say they want to receive their ongoing long-term supports and services in their own home, as opposed to in congregate care settings. And I will preface any conversation about long-term care to say, this is never an anti-nursing home message. This is about where do people want to age? How can we support quality nursing homes and support home and community-based services so that we can make sure that people have access to the care in the setting that they would like to have it, and focus on what's the fiscally responsible choice for us and as policymakers and as in this conversation. So to set some context, I'm going to ask for the next slide so that we can talk about if 52% of older adults are going to need long-term care, who's paying for it? Where are those resources coming from? Many people are under the misimpression that either their private health insurance or surely if I have Medicare, that's who's going to pay for long-term care. That is simply not the case. Medicare does indeed pay for some short-term stay for its hospitalization, but the vast majority of long-term care is paid for by Medicaid. It's indisputably the largest payer for long-term care, and with the growing of the older population, it's imperative that we give consumers access to this robust opportunity in order to be able to age in the setting of their choice. So if Medicaid pays for 52% of care, let's shift to the next slide and talk about how has the nation been funding that long-term care, and what does that growth look like? If we look at the Medicaid long-term care line item, and this is national dollars, so don't get too freaked out, state appropriators, when you see the billions here. This is national numbers. But if you look at the total, I chose this slide because if you look at 1995, as a nation, we were spending $57 billion in Medicaid-funded long-term care. Look at 2016, which is the most recent year that we have every state full data sets for all states with the exception of California. we were spending $167 billion on long-term care. So you can see the trajectory in terms of what Medicaid is funding. Fortunately, in 2013, you see a shift toward home. So the dark blue colors are where the amount of Medicaid funding across the nation that is spent in the home, as opposed to in more costly nursing home settings. And for context, the home and community base, the darker colored bar, is 55% less expensive than the care that is provided in congregate care facilities and nursing homes. So the lighter blue is 55% more expensive than the darker blue. So the good news is that as a nation, starting in 2013, we were beginning this shift toward home, where states were able to provide more care in the home, where people wanted to receive it, and do that at a lower cost. And you can see as in 2016, the most recent data, 57% nationally is where we are in terms of providing home and community-based long-term supports and services as a real option. So that's the national picture. Let's look at Michigan. Next slide, please. Okay, so just because Michigan is on the top, don't let that confuse you. That's the bad end of the chart. So Michigan is only spending 40% of our long-term supports and services dollars in home and community-based care, while the national average is 57%. So we are not doing well in terms of, one, providing care in the setting where people want to receive care, or two, we are spending the majority of our dollars on more expensive care in congregate care settings. So while we've had some opportunities to lean into this, we are falling behind most of the rest of the nation in terms of providing choice. So if you go to the next slide, which takes us back to our platform. There are seniors who want to receive care. There are seniors who are on waiting lists for home and community-based services. So what we're asking the legislature to do is to support seniors and younger people with disabilities to age in their own homes and communities by setting a goal. We're setting a goal of achieving at least a 50% of our Medicaid long-term supports and services dollars to be spent in home and community-based services. I will say and give kudos to some of our champions who are on this call right now who've understood this. Some of our legislators are newer to this and just getting their heads around it, and strong supporters of understanding the issues. Others have been fighting the good fight. We do have in some of the budget proposals this year, in the budget bills, both in the House and the Senate, 1,000 extra slots for My Choice waiver, which would increase some capacity inside of the My Choice waiver. So I appreciate that tip to expanding access. But as we look at the overall rate increases in the overall budget, My Choice waiver is slated to grow by 2%, while institutional care is slated to grow by 5% in terms of rates. And that's not to say, I'm not here to argue what the rates should be for nursing home care. I'm not into the weeds in that. But I will say, if we continue to increase institutional care at a rate that's higher than we're increasing home and community-based services, we will never see Michigan move off the bottom tier of that chart. So before I get too long-winded here, I want to toss it to Lynn and see if you have anything additional you wanted to add on long-term supports and services, Lynn. You're on mute, Lynn.
Thank you. I wanted to say one quick thing, because sometimes I hear this, well, don't family and friends do everything? Why do we need to make such a big investment in Medicaid? And it's true, like 80% of our care is provided out of love and respect from family members and friends. That said, it's long-term care and it's expensive. And when you need daily, everyday care on and on, it usually exhausts at some point. It exhausts people mentally, physically, or financially. And they have to turn to alternatives. So it only makes sense to try to grow the alternatives that have the lower per capita costs. I would also comment that we're in a weird time, aren't we? We've got all these other types of funding coming down, short-term, long-term funding, all sorts of things going on. And I think it's important on this one to keep our eyes on the rebalance and solutions for the future, and recognize that while we have businesses in crisis and relief funds coming there, including the nursing homes, that will help them over a hurdle, that throws the balances off, and you can really look to build some of the home and community-based systems that we need. Christine mentions My Choice. For those of you not familiar, that is Michigan and the country's largest alternative to nursing home care. The waivers, a wave of Medicaid rules to provide care at home at much, much less expensive where people want to live. So you can take, as you look toward the future, you can look for the sustainability of that change by shifting even a tiny percentage of that institutional care dollar going forward will be a sustainability factor for really taking this opportunity to provide relief to businesses and also look at a tool for rebalancing of how we approach that large line item that, thank God we have it, and how we use that with most fiscal prudence, which would be growing the lower per capita cost option that reaches so many. And then you have PACE 2. I will mention PACE. PACE is a very small subset. It's a good one. We started one here in Southwest Michigan. It's good. It's a good option. It does not have the reach of the My Choice waiver, which reaches the entire state and can partner across. So that is our prime vehicle. So I just wanted to add those two in if people are thinking about what about the private people and how are you going to afford all this? It's very doable.
Thank you, and I appreciate that. And it's a good segue into the next point. So not everyone, what we've been talking about is Medicaid funded long-term care, long-term services and supports. The vast majority of people fall somewhere in between Medicaid and mass wealth, and they just need some support in the middle of that. So the Silver Key Coalition, I think most of our legislators are familiar with this. Silver Key Coalition is a coalition of over 40 organizations, and individuals are in there as well, who have brought together and done some studies and some white papers to understand what is the impact of in-home services provided through the Aging and Adult Services Agency. These are personal care, this is caregiver support, this is nutrition support like home delivered meals. And right now, Michigan has over 6,000 people on waiting lists for the ASA services. And the Silver Key Coalition has made a request for $6.3 million increase for in-home services and a $1 million increase for home delivered meals to address these waiting lists and really get at the middle ground. It really is, it serves the near poor older adults in terms of those who make too much money for Medicaid and not enough money to private pay. And it does extend some opportunity to actually have people cost share and pay a portion of the service, but have the remainder be something that is a partnership between private and public, and then gives the opportunity for more people to be served. But just for the return on investment here, if just 84 people, because there is some evidence, and I think, and we'll share with this group of legislators the white paper on this, there's evidence that people who receive in-home services in this bucket delay long-term care. And if of the 6,000 people waiting for care, waiting for services, in-home services, if only 84 of them don't go into a nursing home for 1 year, if it's delayed only 1 year, this budget request will pay for itself. So if they don't have to spend down into Medicaid and tap into that funding stream, we will pay for this increase in federal or state appropriation. I will say, when I talk about what's the current state budget proposals, we do have in that supplemental, legislators, you will have seen increases come down for this. Those are federal dollars that are appropriated, and they're important, and I'm glad they're coming to our community. But per Lynn's point, we need to have a long view of, not just a stopgap, but how do we look forward to those older adults who are turning 60 and 65 and needing some supports. We need to make sure we have a strong system to support the non-Medicaid low-hanging fruit in terms of helping people stay out of nursing homes and staying engaged in their own home and communities. That would be these ASA services. And Lynn, do you have anything to add to that?
No, you can view these services as a huge prevention structure in Michigan. It's Medicare to private pay. People need Medicaid to private pay. ASA and these Old Americans Act services that are in the middle, this middle tier cost share is the gap filler for the biggest chunk of the population. It's important.
And then the third point ties to it really is a linchpin for the previous two, supporting and strengthening the direct care workforce. This is the essential workers who enable people to continue living in their own home and community. Right now, most direct care workers are compensated at a rate that they say themselves. It does not allow them to make a living wage. And in fact, that's self-report. But if we look at the data, 35% of Michigan's direct care workers receive food stamps. 34% lack affordable housing, and a full 22% live below the poverty line. So these are workers who are doing hands-on care in critical and important ways and are in many cases making just barely minimum wage or ever so slightly above. During the pandemic, the state legislature was recognized the critical nature of this workforce and added $2 an hour premium pay to their work during this pandemic. That was incredibly important and valued. And the recommendation that you see before you is that we would make permanent that pay increase in fiscal year 2022 so that those workers can make a wage that reflects something that they could actually live on. And in fact, we want to thank the Senate. In the Senate's budget proposal, they have a $2.35 increase, which is what it currently is, but they extend that through fiscal year 2022. We would ask that that be made permanent, would be so that those workers can count on that. And in fact, so that employers can attract and retain a workforce. And beyond that, helping to work with the industry and with policymakers and with MDHHS to look at policies that would provide quality training, increase career opportunities, and indeed increase the quality of life for this key workforce. I recognize in the House budget, there is a placeholder. While the House did not put in the specific wage increase amount per hour, there is a $100 placeholder so that this can come together in conference committee so that this issue can be discussed and come to some solutions in conference committee. So what the ask would be here would be that you would consider the make permanency of that $2 an hour or $2.35. Thank you to the Senate, because that's where it is right now. I will say before I toss it to Lynn, just previous to this session, this early afternoon, we had a meeting with our provider network. I think there were 40 people from Southwest Michigan, business owners, most of them, many of them for-profit, some non-profit, some community agencies who are in this business of helping older adults live with dignity and independence. And when I did a poll, I said, what's the most important issue to you of all these 5 platform issues? Direct care, supporting the direct care workforce was the #1 issue. And right behind it was rebalancing Medicaid and supporting ASA. But we talked about that. We said, we have to do all 3 of those things. We have to have this direct care workforce in order to be able to do the rest. Lynn, did I miss anything or anything you want to layer on there?
No, just that this is really important to build this in. We're going to be working on it on multiple fronts because my heart went out to the world with listening to the providers on almost everybody having a hard time staffing care plans. This is not the end, but this is the first low-hanging fruit. We need the House to meet it, and I think we just need to have this happen, and then we can move on from there. It's really important, and once it becomes part of the system, so to speak, the administration of it gets much easier. If you've heard of issues with that, those kind of go away then. So this is an important issue. It just reinforced for Christine and I just in the last hour.
Yeah, it was. Thank you. So with that, I will invite the legislators to unmute themselves, and I'll ask our IT team to stop sharing this so we can see our faces here. And I will toss a question to the legislators and invite any of you to respond in turn. The question for you is, given the strong preference among older adults to live at home and the fiscal case for providing care to more people at a lower cost, do you see a more favorable environment for getting to that 50% goal of Medicaid long-term supports and service in home and community-based settings? And if not, what are the barriers and what are the things you're going to do to help people have the choice that they want? So I'll just toss that long-winded question to any of you that would like to respond to that.
I think with the what we've seen this past year and people not being able to visit their family members in nursing homes, that really opened a lot of people's minds to working towards allowing their loved ones to be at home. And I think with my colleagues, it's had the same effect, you know, looking at the importance of staying home as long as possible. So yeah, I believe in my caucus that is the desire to work towards that. It's just getting what is needed to be able to provide, you know, the right financial services, you know, to allowing that to happen.
Appreciate that, Senator Lozada. The first is understanding the premise and getting the key to the goal, and then finding the right model. And I think when we talk about the ROI on institutional versus home and community based, I think the case is there to be made. So however we can help your caucus see that and take action.
But I know that adjustment needs to be made, right? I mean, as far as Medicaid, and allowing people to remain at home and not having to, you know.
Yeah. So yeah, to Senator Lozada's point, the real gold standard would be for people to have real choice, and that the money would follow the person to the community-based setting versus institutional. So I won't wax poetic. I'll let others join in.
I like how you interpret me very well. So thank you.
Others.
I'll jump in there.
Go ahead.
2019, you guys had the similar, you know, push, and I don't toward allowing people to have the choice to stay home longer, and you know, with the home and community-based services. So with the 1,000 extra slots added, you know, with the recent addition there, and the waiving of Medicaid requirements, what is the resistance? Is it just that there aren't people spearheading it in the legislature, or where are the barriers to getting to this goal that you guys have seen thus far? Because I'm curious about that. I know that this hasn't been one of my expertise areas, but I'd be curious what kind of barriers we can jump over together in these upcoming months.
You want to I'll jump in with one piece. I think there's a structural issue there, Representative, that we really need to tackle, in that because nursing homes are incredibly important. They're very high cost. That structure of that budget generates automatic increases to the most expensive structure of the budget. And it's usually, and so that by itself, and to what Christine just said, look at the percentage growth in the most expensive option versus the least expensive option. So I think there's some structural issues that need to be just discussed. How do you safeguard an industry and make it strong and move towards the future? Building on there's different theories of how that can happen, and those are robust and have been working in a lot of states. Look at the bottom of that chart that Christine. Other states are just like way out there. And I think ours it's a structural piece that maybe stays off the radar screen until it's too late and it's already promoted automatic increases. Christine, I don't know if it's anything else to add.
No, I think you were spot on some of it is automatic increases that are structurally built in for the institutional care setting side of the world, in terms of an automatic increase, regardless of what the cost of living is. There's a set cost of living increase, and then the home and community-based side does not go up at the same rate. Also, it's on the policy side, Brad. If you if you have the functional needs and you meet Medicaid eligibility, you show up at an institutional setting, you will get care. On the home and community-based side, we assign slots. You talked about 1,000 extra slots, and yay, that's great. Candidly, it's a terrible word. We're going to say, okay, this many slots, we'll put this many people in these many slots. And wouldn't it be the right thing to do to look at our structure to say, we have this many people who need care and this many people who qualify for supports, services and supports. How do we support them in the setting of their choice? And by gosh, where they want them to be cared for by the majority is what the least restrictive setting. So it's going to take more than just appropriating. It's going to take policy. It's going to take department folks. I will say just candidly that last year, if you recall, there was another 1,000 slots appropriated for my choice waiver. And when it got over to actually being implemented, didn't happen at the departmental level. And I'm not throwing, I won't point fingers. I will just say we've got some structural challenges that makes just appropriating sometimes not just it's not the only solution. It's an important piece because we have to be able to fund it, but there's structural limitations as well.
And I would
Others?
say on the end of side of things, to echo Senator Losada, a lot of that is going to be a policy focus, as you mentioned. And I think not a lot of good things have come out of COVID, but one of the things is the view shift and open dialogues. I know we're going to talk about broadband later. I think that's one of those. And I think this is another one that everybody's heard the horror stories of people not being able to see their families and what's happened in our nursing homes. And people are scared and they want to stay in their own homes more than ever before. And I think the numbers that you always present, the first time I ever saw those were shocking to me. And we can put those in front of people all the time. And I think we understand that and my colleagues understand that. But now it's different. It's going to be a bigger push, I think. And people now, it's not just the approach, it's the policy side. And I think the dialogue is there and there will be a push for that.
Thank you. Beth, did I see you were getting ready wanted to speak up?
Sure, I'll go next. And I think, as a third termer now, probably the most helpful thing that I've seen over my time. Sorry, I have a cat who never photobombs my video chats, but today she just decided to be a star. The fact that you guys explained that to me early on in my first term really helped me understand and advocate for you early on in my first term. And even though I was policy side, I guess looking back on it, it's even more important for because of the fact that you can put together, and I even wrote this down, for your 6.3.75 million increase in in-home services and an additional 1 million in home delivered meals would result in, 84 seniors delaying going into a higher level of care for 1 year would actually pay for that. Those are the conversations that need to be done with first termers, especially first termers on DHHS committee, because, it is tough. And yes, right now, due to COVID, there's a lot of federal and state money coming in to sort of fill the gaps because of all the problems that COVID created, right? But that in and of itself, if you followed, budgets over the last 20 years, that is short-term 1 or 2 year time money. And there's going to be a time where all that money goes away and there's going to be a pulling back into a regular rhythm of budgeting. And so, yes, absolutely. 100% Rep. Wenzel's right on the money there with saying, because of what happened with COVID, it's sort of pushed some of our conversations in this sector with the aging and wanting them to stay in place as long as they can. It's pushed it right up front and center. And I frankly think you have a lot of golden opportunity here to capitalize on that. And honestly, and I'm a teacher too, so I kind of think like this, the upcoming elections 2022, it's going to be a big a big class coming in. And depending on who is on appropriations at that time, I can't tell you how important it is for them to frame out what the big picture is in terms of healthcare and money and where it goes and how to create stability long term and where to strategically invest in order to really honor people's wishes to stay in their homes longer, because it's a complexity, but when you get it, you can't unsee that, you can't unhear that, you connect it with people and your own families. And I don't know how someone can hear that and not understand and know it's true and want to help. But on the policy side, like I said, up until now, I'm kind of on the outside of approach looking in, and I can talk to people on approach about it. But, I just, I think that's probably my biggest message. You know, guys, I will fight for you, and especially helpful are the new numbers that you guys framed out for us, because it helps bring other people along in the process.
Yeah.
But that strategic early education on the approach side with people on DHHS committee is so very important. That I guess that's my biggest message today. And offline, I have a question just about whether or not your pay slots are still frozen. So, you know, if you have time to get to it today, I
Sure.
kind of want to know about that. If not, I can call you this week and follow up with you on that.
Okay, we'll make sure we get to that. I
Yeah.
appreciate your comments, Beth, and absolutely, I think the long game is important, and bringing people along and helping them to understand. I also want to marry that with absolutely, we have to talk about the long game, and we have to be bold right now. So where's our opportunity, where we are right now? What are the decisions we can make to move us toward this while we continue to bring others along? So I appreciate your championship. Before we move to broadband and to kinship caregivers, I just want to say, Rep. Kara or Josh, did either of you want to jump in here?
Yeah, I'll jump in here. I have a question here with the in-home services and investing in that form. That's something that's really intriguing to me, and cost effective, and also being a potentially better quality as long as we can keep that. Of course, some people may not have those options and may need to go to a nursing home at some point. With the more money that we're investing in these in-home services, I think you were responding to Representative Paquette. Could you go into a little bit further detail? If we got to 50, 55, maybe even 60% for the in-home services, would we then be able to save some money from the nursing home end?
Yeah, absolutely. So as we begin to shift from the more costly setting, we would accomplish two things. Yes, we would be able to save money on the services we're expending per person, so our cost per beneficiary would go down. But just as importantly, Steve, we would be able to serve more people. Right now, we have people waiting for care in home and community-based settings, and so we would be able to we would be able to serve more people who need the care, and at the same time, save money out of that line item. I will point you back to also the trajectory of Medicaid spending. So while I say those things, and it is in all seriousness and with all validity, I cannot say that Medicaid spending will continue to go up. It's going to be, what is the curve? What is the incline? Is Michigan going to bend and not continue to spend in the most costly setting and not continue to go higher at a faster rate because we're spending more in institutional care? People are getting older. There will be more people. So we have to be able to respond in a way that provides the care in the setting where they want to at the least expensive spot. Does that make sense? Was that clear?
Yeah, thank you for the response to that. And just a little bit off the trail a little bit, something that I've observed for those who are in their 20s, 30s, 40s, there's a lot of able-bodied people out there who, when I go out to, I've had restaurants in the community, I try to go out to eat, and it says on the door that they're closed on times when they normally are open. And in order to fund these things, we need to have the labor force, you all who have been paying in, as you went, now you're retired, and, now it's time for us to take care of all you people who may be a little bit less young. We need to continue to drive this economy so that we can properly take care of the people who are less young and who are retired. So there's a lot of businesses out there who are suffering because they can't find employees. They want to be open, but they can't find people to work. So I'm speaking more towards, we need to keep this engine of the economy going so that we can provide these kinds of services.
That's a great comment, and we can, that probably is another platform point, but I love that comment, Representative Kara. For one point, I want that we often talk with, and when we have an opportunity to meet in person, we talk about the economic sector of aging care and aging, responding to the aging of the population. And it's not just about care. Also, that's where most of the disposable income is. We need to lean into having, engaging an older population. So, or less young, as I hear you talking about it. So I thank you. Josh, anything you want to add before we move on to the last two pieces of the platform?
Sure. I think one of the things, just when you bring up, what can we do right now? One of the things we still need to consider, though, is that we're in a very, very uncertain time, in particular between the economic after effects of COVID-19 and then just the rapid inflation we're seeing, and even from a non-economic point of view, it just seems like we're at a point where anything can happen from day to day. So when we consider these major policy shifts, we have to remember, there's already a standing structure that it's not necessarily saying it shouldn't be reformed, but anytime we're considering reform, what's going to be the after effect down the line there. So I think in some cases, slow and steady is still important to kind of keep on the back burner there, keep in consideration.
That's an interesting point. And one of the beauties in my mind is that the per capita costs are so much lower, and that if you take just a small, and not all of the funds are even usually expended in the other side of the coin, the other side of the road. If you take even a small percentage and achieve a degree of rebalance by just a few percentage points out of a huge amount, you move significantly. So you don't have to worry about, in terms of sustainability of investments made now to shift to a lower per capita cost. You can maintain both. So I think that's really important.
Thank you. With that, I'm going to ask our tech people to put up the next slide that has the last two pieces of our platform. We'll chat about broadband access and kinship families, and then we'll bring the panel back for comments and then lean into some questions and answers from the group. So bridging the digital divide for older adults. This pandemic, as we talk about different opportunities that it has brought to light, vaccine registration, social isolation and loneliness. If you think about it, if you could not connect on something like this, on a digital space, how isolated you would be. Stark disparities already exist in Southwest Michigan. There are some pieces of Berrien, Cass, and Van Buren counties that are complete broadband deserts. If you put up the broadband access map, there are some white spaces, and that's where no broadband access exists. And even if you look at that map, if you were reading the Herald Palladium last week, there was some results of a Berrien County survey, and Berrien County has greater, broader access by far than Cass and Van Buren. But a survey showed that actual access on the ground is less than what is in that broadband map. 37.7% of Berrien County residents report that they have no internet connectivity at all. An additional 36% have access to broadband internet speed, so 36% do, but 28.5% have access, but it's lower than broadband connectivity. And other counties, as I said, are far behind. So part of the digital, so there's two pieces of it. We need broadband access that's affordable and consistent across the region and indeed across the state. And part of the solution is to make sure that older adults have the training and have some opportunities to get up to speed so that they can join the digital community. Similar to, or one of the things the Area Agency on Aging is doing in our Campus for Creative Aging, we have Zoom classes for older adults and other how to get connected. But if you don't have the infrastructure, you're left behind. So our ask is that you would support broadband access and policies and appropriations that make that a reality, to expand that infrastructure for Michigan residents, regardless of where they live. If you live in rural Cass County, you should not have less access to the world than if you live in a more metropolis area of our state or even in our county. And then the last piece of our platform is kinship caregivers and kinship families. Kinship care, for those of you who might need a definition, is the full-time care and nurturing of a child by relatives or other adults who have a family relationship with a minor child. Many, many times, this is grandparents who serve in this role. And for numbers, to give you the number, 52,000 children in Michigan right now live in kinship families. 52,000. And if they weren't in those kinship families, and you think about if they were in foster care instead, one, we don't have the infrastructure, we don't have foster care homes, and two, it's more, again, it's expensive, and three, children thrive better often when they're in a kinship relationship. But these kinship families are struggling without access to a centralized way to connect to services and supports and navigating raising children who many times have been through trauma and are continuing to go through trauma and need access to care and services to help them thrive. So last year, those of you for whom it's not your first term, this is not your first go around, you probably remember the kinship bills that went through both the House and the Senate last year, and then failed and received a governor's veto based on, I think it was an advise and consent, some confusion, and they failed there. I expect these bills to get reintroduced this year. There is some boilerplate language around the kinship care bills. I would ask for your support, that you would support the boilerplate language, and that you would, when these bills are introduced, that you would support them and support kinship caregiver families. Before I bring the panel back to address these two issues, Lynn, was there anything you wanted to layer on?
No, that's okay.
Okay, then I'd ask our tech team to take down, well, look at you, you're before I could even do that. So I would toss it to our legislators, invite you to unmute yourselves and just respond to either or both of those, the broadband access and kinship caregiver families.
Well, let me jump right in and just say, we had Senator Nesbitt and myself have had a broadband bill around for more than one term, and this term it did get to the governor's desk. It was vetoed. It was going to specifically improve rural access in unserved areas. So we addressed one of the governor's concerns of speed, and but at this point, I'm not hopeful that it will be law, and we will continue our efforts in that area. I would strongly suggest that that as a group, you band together and push a little bit for it. I think the governor's concern that she expressed about the bill and about the issue was that to provide a personal property tax exemption to a business that wanted to put fiber in unserved areas would result in a potential future loss of income for the state because of the personal property tax that would be exempted. And when I talk to villages and counties and local officials and families and doctors that have served patients in rural areas that need access to telehealth because they don't want to leave their homes because of COVID and all that stuff, not to even mention the schools that need, broadband for all the kids because they were virtual for a long time. They're willing to take that sacrifice. They understand that broadband is such a big need that if we can do that, anything we can do to help push that ball down the field for rural people in unserved areas would be worth it. And knowing that a personal property tax exemption is not permanent and then it would go back on the tax rolls. I just believe that the governor's concern, and as well as the MEA and the Treasury's concern about potential future loss of income is just not good enough when you're talking about people that live in areas that still don't have it. So there is a lot of money out there in terms of grants that are one-time grants for COVID, not permanent, that are going to be filtering and trickling out to the state. But I would just say that at that point, because they're grants, they have to be applied for probably through counties and local broadband companies like Bloomingdale Communications or Midwest Electric, something like that. So there will be some money coming from the feds, but it will be temporary. So with that, I'm sure that because as a caucus, we talk a lot about this. I'll let some others comment.
Okay, thank
Josh,
you.
Josh, do you want to talk about the Senate Bill 46?
Yeah, I was hoping to jump in on that quickly. So as Rep. Griffin mentioned, we reintroduced this legislation to address the speed concerns that the governor outlined in her initial veto. And so that was Senator Nesbitt's bill, Senate Bill 46, and that has passed both chambers, but is still awaiting final determination from the governor. But one important thing to note too, when considering all this grant money out there, whether it's these reconnect grants and these things that we've been doing for a few years now, or this COVID relief funding, is that the big issue here is that initial cost of the infrastructure. And so those grants can only go so far, but if you lower that upfront cost, that helps get you that next mile. And that's one of the biggest things we hear from people. They'll be saying, well, you know, my neighbor has it just down the street, but I can't get it. And when I call the company, they want, you know, $10,000 to come to my house just a few hundred feet or a few thousand feet. But in reality, that's the cost of this infrastructure. So by tackling that upfront cost, we're not only allowing any current grants and future grants to go that much farther, but you're also incentivizing that investment. And when you want to talk about a potential loss of revenue, you're not gaining any revenue, any property tax revenue on property that's not developed. So if that infrastructure isn't put down to begin with, there's no property taxes coming from it. And then just one other quick thing too, to know on the grant side of things, a lot of that is based on the FCC definitions of what is served or unserved, which is based on census block. And, you know, if someone in your census block is served, even if most of the people aren't, it can kind of make things a little more confusing when you go to apply for grants and how that weighs towards getting your area the connection it needs. So it's kind of an important thing to consider for our federal legislators that might be on the call as well for future considerations.
Sorry, I was having trouble finding the unmute button there. Before we turn to questions from our audience here, our fellow citizens, does anyone else have anything to ask or to comment on? Okay, with that, I think Amy might have some questions. Amy, you want to pin yourself? And I think I might have some here too. So you go ahead and
all right.
Let me know if there's any that you want to present.
All right. First, I just would like to acknowledge a lot of comments about the direct care workforce. So it seems to be the hot topic of the afternoon, and people are really wondering what plan is being put into place that will allow these workers a living wage so that they can do the essential work and not fall below the poverty line. And it was just for the panel. It wasn't an individual question.
Okay. So what policy can you repeat that? Just the question part, what policies are being put in place for living wage for direct care workers? Was that it? Mm-hmm. Anything new and additional anyone wants to put a finer point on in addition to the comments made earlier? Amy, I just emailed you some questions that came my way. Either you can read them or I can, either way. I think I've got them here. I saw this one come through, so I will pose it. That's not directed to any specific legislator. Like everyone else, I saw the news reports of how many people lived in nursing homes and died from COVID. Now, I want to do everything I can to avoid living in a nursing home. How will you make sure that I will have the choice? I have the choice to get care at home instead if I need it. It sounds like it's a lot cheaper for everyone. Well, there's a question for you. What will you do to make sure I can live where I want to?
Yeah, I think everyone should be able to, have the opportunity to live where they want to. I mean, sometimes we know there's a point where you're not able to live at home, and that's why we do have the need for nursing homes. But I think we're all on the same page as far as working towards that. We know it's a cost savings. It's cheaper to live at home than in the nursing home. And I just want to add that I do have a bill, Senate Bill 213. During the pandemic, the nursing home ombudsman was not allowed to go into the nursing homes to, make sure that people were getting the proper care, they were getting having their needs met. So what this bill would do, it would allow the ombudsman to go into the nursing home if there's a shutdown greater than 7 days. They will have the right to go into nursing homes to check on the facilities, ensure that everyone is doing as well as they possibly can, that there are no other issues, or if there are issues that can, be handled by the ombudsman. And then if it's less than 7 days, then the facility, and it's not just nursing home, it's any long-term care facility. And if it's less than 7 days, then the facility has to make arrangements with the ombudsman to allow them to go in, via Zoom and check things
Yeah.
out to make sure that everything is okay. Because that was one thing that came out of COVID that we learned, was that no one was checking on our long-term care facilities. And there were lots of issues as a result of that. So.
I appreciate that.
And then
That was
also
Senate Bill 2.
yeah, and the ombudsman would also have access to the guardian's information so
Yeah.
that they can communicate with the guardian.
Thank you. That's a key and an important point. We have just a couple of minutes left, and so I want any final comments. And Beth, I see you first waving your hand there, so take it away.
Well, just to comment directly on the question about, what are we doing to help give you the choices to stay in your home if you want to in the future. And I think I would just sort of take you back to all the comments that I've made up until this point are geared towards that one thing. And my message that education is key, especially with people coming into the house, is done for a specific reason. And here's why. In the House and the Senate, we are term limited. We come in with different skills. For example, I'm a teacher. I'm a high school English teacher. And I have a little experience with area agency on aging stuff because I worked with them as a county commissioner. But because we're all term limited and we're coming in as a lawyer or as a business owner, as this or that, nobody comes in and is an expert on funding. So we have to, as first termers, new people, we have to learn a whole lot very, very quickly. And that's why I mentioned to Lynn and to Christine how important it is to get to the right committee, to the right appropriations committee, that where this conversation is done and where those decisions about how much money goes into those services that help you stay in your home, where all that conversation happens, that's where that early education needs to be made sooner so that people can understand the big picture sooner. And that is the best way I know how to helping make better decisions in the long run, by equipping the people that are new to understand the big picture so that they make the best decisions for people who wish to age in place.
I appreciate that, Beth. And I will say message received. And I also will compliment this delegation of legislators in Southwest Michigan. We hear from our colleagues across the state from the AAA network that legislators are not as in tune to these issues and as understanding. So as you can communicate with your colleagues in your caucus and we communicate with them as well, that's a strong partnership. So I'll toss it to any of the others who would like to make some final comments. Pauline?
And I'd like to thank you for that. Since I've been in office, right away you reached out. It's always been a great open dialogue between your group. We're lucky to have that, and everybody on this call is lucky that you have this area agency advocating for you and your needs and our community's needs. They're great partners to work with, and we're very lucky to have you.
Well, thank you. Brad, Josh, Steve, any other final comments?
Yeah, grateful to have you guys. One thing that's a passion for me is intergenerational learning. I was a prior educator as well, and so I'm sharing the ed budget this term and putting pieces in place, structures in place to get our aging population connected with our younger people, I think is a good long-term approach too, because a lot of these issues go under the radar. And so you guys do a great job at getting us up to speed. But I think also in the longer route, we need our young people involved as much as possible with our aging population. So finding little pieces to put in there to increase the likelihood that wisdom can get passed down to other generations is an area of passion for me as well. And yeah, and talking about slots versus people, that's something that I think we need to change the way we frame it as well. So thank you guys for the time today too.
Absolutely. And Representative Paquette, you just hit on a theme that we are an interdependent and intergenerational society. We're best when we bring all of that together. Everyone's got something to bring to the table. So I appreciate that you mentioned that intergenerational component.
Well, I appreciate all of your support and it really does just take a moment for dialogue. I feel the support. We just have to find the paths together to make this happen. And that we'll do everything we can. We try our darndest. And appreciate the partnership because we can't do it without you. and then reaching to those you get to know the folks on the committees that may be not represented in Southwest Michigan or that you're not on. So that weave through the legislature is really important.
Representative Kara.
But yeah, just I know we're up against time crunch here. Just want to say thank you to you, Christine, Lynn, all of you for helping to educate us on these issues, and continue to look forward to learning more.
Thank you. It's great to have you here. And Josh, I'm going to toss it to you for a final moment if you'd like to just take it. But I want to say something about staff. So as I talk to advocates around the state and around the nation, I just want to laud staff of the legislators, your legislative staff. Those folks are just go into the weeds to understand this stuff. So Josh, we're so glad you were here. I'll toss it to you for any final comments from Senator Nesbitt's office, and then we'll wrap up.
Sure. Thanks for having me, and thanks for hosting this. Overall, you know, we just got to keep looking forward, see what we can do to get our economy back on track, get things to be a little more stable, a little more normal, and you know, hopefully as we work into the future, can keep considering the reforms that are actually going to be effective and efficient, as you guys have pointed out quite a bit throughout this.
Well, thank you all very much. This has been a wonderful and helpful dialogue. I appreciate the passion that you all have around these issues and your commitment. I do want to make folks aware that this is not the end of the conversation. This is Senior Action Week, and there is a state live stream event coming up on May 12th, where you will hear from legislative leadership across the state. We'll talk about these issues. There'll be a dialogue. You'll hear some broader comments and opportunities. That's on May 12th at 10 a.m. You can register at oldermichiganiansday.com or just go to areaagencyonaging.org, our website, and you can get connected there. There's opportunities to advocate on these issues, and I know that the legislators welcome hearing from you and from your constituents to help them know how you best would like to age in your own communities, and indeed be connected, because our older adult population has a lot to give, as well as on the receiving end. So with that, Lynn, I will give you the opportunity for any final comments, and we'll say goodbye.
I think we're there. I think we just need to, I think there's a key in that rebalancing a bit to release a lot of energy towards a lot of these issues without harm to anyone. And I think we got a lot of will here. So let's find a way to do it.
Well, thank you all, and I appreciate the extra few minutes here at the end. So wishing you all a good afternoon and a good Senior Action Week. Take care.
Thank you for coming.
Bye-bye.